Children are never too young to be introduced to the many cultures and people of our world. Black History Month is a key time to talk to children about race and racial justice related topics in an age-appropriate way. Our next guest is no stranger to us here at Your TV. Calissa Ngozi is here. Calissa, welcome back once again.
Thank you for having me.
Excellent. She's a mental health professional. And Calissa, how could I appropriately introduce racial literacy to a child?
Well, here's the thing. Black History Month is such a great time to celebrate our history. However, I want this conversation to continue 365 days a year. So how do we start talking about it? You just do. You start telling your kids about the rich history, not only of the world, but Canada specific, and how important Black history is to them, past, present, and future.
Words like enslavement and segregation, those are big words. How do we introduce that kind of terminology to a child?
Right. Well, there is a difference. So with enslavement, we're talking about actually placing someone against their will into slavery. Now, slavery being that they're working or they're doing things that they're not paid for and they're forced to do. So, you know, the age-old history of working on cotton mills, working within the slave masters' houses, you know, working in factories, all of this is unpaid labor. And also the living situations that they had to deal with at that time were astronomically poor.
I can kind of see from the child's perspective, this could be a bit of a confusing conversation. Is that right?
Oh, absolutely. And I think what's important is for parents to label that we're not trying to blame anybody for the history that happened. We just want to enrich them with the knowledge. And I think using kid-friendly language is super important. We don't want kids to be depressed. We don't want kids to be like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this happened in a negative way, but just to let them know that, listen, this was a part of our history. We don't want to forget it. And these are the steps that we're trying to do to move forward together.
Use some of that kid-friendly language on me. How would you, if I was a child, how would you start the conversation?
Well, I think I'd ask them, what do you know about Black history? And depending on their age.
My answer would be nothing. Like,
right?
You know?
That's a scary thought because you should. And I think we really need to be teaching that in schools. So I think I would start with kid-friendly books. So we've got things like Ruby Bridges, The Story of Harriet Tubman, The Underground Railroad. So using those kid-friendly books to explain exactly what happened, it's going to help them to sort of understand. You start there. And then you move on to things like Rosa Parks. Then you move on to things, what does slavery actually look like? And how did we progress through it? And I think that's where the important conversation is.
Any good resources, maybe movies or something like that, that children can really be introduced to?
Well, I think I mentioned Ruby Bridges. That is a great story about a little Black girl and what it was like for her to attend an all-white school. So she went through things like bullying. She went through things like segregation. So segregation is another huge topic, right? Where Black students or Black people weren't even allowed to use the same bathroom or water fountain or walk on the same side of the street as the white counterparts.
Now, these conversations, you know, they're not one and done, is that right?
No, this is a lifelong journey of learning. And that's why it's important, like I said, yes, let's highlight a lot of our authors, our actors, you know, the philanthropists, all of these Black individuals that, you know, commit to our communities, but we need to continue the conversation beyond that so that we're enriched.
The parent and or the caregiver, you know, they're the ones who are being the teacher. How do they prepare?
They need to read the books. They need to look into the history. Everybody has access to Google, right? So it's looking at what that looks like. You know, in Canada, specifically in Ontario, we have a lot of museums, even in St. Catharines, that'll talk to you about what it was like, you know, during those times, going through settlements, all of those pieces. And in Nova Scotia, we have something called Africville, right? Which was a village way back when. And the Underground Railroad was actually connected to St. Catharines as well, which a lot of people don't know. So I think immersing themselves in that rich, deep history and then letting their kids know is super important.
And you know what? Our local library systems across Niagara, I think, are fantastic, and there has to be great resources there. Is that right?
Absolutely. But in my opinion, there's never enough. We need more, we need more, and we need more.
All right. You know, Calissa, is there anything else you want to really add to this important topic?
Well, I think it's important for your viewers to know that Black History Month is fantastic to celebrate, but we need this 365 days a year. We need to continue the conversation, even if it's uncomfortable. We live in a world that is discomfort, but it's something to be celebrated. And the more knowledge that we have as adults for our kids, the more the history can be celebrated and recognized and not forgotten.
You know, we're taping the first 10 days into February, but February is 28 days long, right? So we still have a long way to go to celebrate Black History Month. Thank you so much, Calissa. Always a pleasure.